We have a fantastic lineup for you tonight, starting with Mike Boland, Chief Analyst at Artillery Intelligence, to give you a rundown of the industry predictions. And then we'll have a fireside chat between Tom Emmerich, VP of Product at Eighth Wall, and Amy Lemaire, partner at the WXR Fund. So let's go ahead and welcome Mike.
Everyone, that's awesome to be here. So first of all, for those of you who have joined us in the past may recognize this space, but you also may recognize that we've sort of dressed it up a little bit with some new accoutrement, signs and screens and such. So this represents the next stage in our evolution. And for that, we really want to thank Wen Chang, who's done a great job at kind of dressing up this space. And if you continue to join us at future events, we're going to continue to do that and even find some new kind of fun venues beyond this sort of movie theater stage-like environment. So I'm going to give some slides. Wen, how are we doing on those slides? Thank you. So you can advance those as I go. Perfect. Before really kind of going into our main event here, which is going to be Tom Emmerich and Amy Lemaire, I hope to sort of set the stage for the next 10 minutes or so and sort of a lightning round look at Artillery's 2021 predictions from a recent report that we did. So before getting into it, a quick bit about me for context. I'm a 15-year tech industry analyst, and I run Artillery Intelligence, which is a market research and analyst firm for spatial computing. And that takes form in lots of narrative reports and data deliverables and market forecasts and consumer surveys. And we have a sister publication called AR Insider, which you may know about. So one of the things on that list of deliverables, the reason I kind of mention that is these monthly reports we do. So we have a big white paper every month, and when you can go to the next slide here. And once per year, we focus on the lessons from the last 12 months and the outlook for the next 12 months. So that's where we're sort of drawing upon today. And I've streamlined it into the top 5 trends in the interest of time. So let's get right into it. When you can go to the next slide for prediction 1. So the first trend gets into the question that's sort of on everyone's mind, which is AR glasses, and particularly what Apple could end up doing. And as many signals indicate, we won't see Apple AR glasses in 2021, but we will see the ball moved forward from other companies like Vuzix, which just unveiled its micro LED smart glasses at CES. And I actually bring up those glasses specifically and deliberately because I think it represents a design target we're really going to start to see more of. So instead of bulky headgear that provides graphically intensive AR experiences like Magic Leap, the pendulum will start to swing towards social wearability, is what I call it, as really the primary design target. And of course, that has UX trade-offs, but I think it's still a necessary starting point for mainstream acclamation for glasses that people will actually wear. And that brings us back to Apple, because several signs point to the fact that it will take this sort of wearability route for its V1 glasses, which could come in the 2022 or 2023 timeframe. And Apple is the other thing, the other sort of clue, is that it really needs to shoot for massive markets due to its size and fiduciary drive. And the concept of smart sunglasses or corrective eyewear even that also have some digital features that play off of other wearables like AirPods and watch is a much larger potential market for Apple than bulky AR headgear. Now, that said, something bulky with more sort of graphical intensity could instead come in the nearer term VR device that was rumored last week in Bloomberg that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. And then, with respect to AR, Apple's eventual goal, of course, is, full on AR immersion. But we believe what's more likely in that V1 is what we're calling AR Light. Now, if we go to the next slide to kind of pan back to put some numbers against all of that, we think that Apple could inflect the market with its classic halo effect, and we project almost 4 million AR glasses sold in 2024, with Apple as the market share leader. But keep in mind To put this into perspective, this looks like very steep growth, and it's growing from a base of almost zero today. But that 4 million units in 2024 is still dwarfed, or it will be dwarfed, by the smartphone installed base by about 1,000 to 1. So it still has miles to go. So if we go to the next prediction, prediction 2, speaking of smartphones, that's certainly the dominant AR delivery vehicle today, as we all know. Mobile AR piggybacks on smartphone scale, and though it's not AR's fully actualized version, it's a compelling step on its evolutionary path that's creating real value today, as we'll get into in the next prediction. But if we go to the next slide first, to again sort of put some numbers behind some of these claims, there are about 3.4 billion smartphones globally, most of which are actually compatible with web AR, given the great work of companies like Eighth Wall. And that's followed by AR compatibility for Facebook, which includes Instagram and Messenger, then ARKit, ARCore, and Snapchat. But the more important figure is not AR compatibility, but actual AR users. So by adding up and deduping all of these platforms, we get an aggregate mobile AR user base of about 600 million, growing to more than 800 million by the end of this year. Now, a few highlights here before we move on are that Snapchat actually doesn't have the biggest device reach, but it has the largest portion of its users that are AR active at about 75%. And I think that holds lots of kind of lessons in the kind of the UX and the AR culture, the camera culture that Snapchat's been able to build. For a lot of the same reasons, Instagram is a sleeping giant as it continues to integrate AR, as is TikTok, which has really barely scratched the surface. If you think about it, TikTok is today where Snapchat was a few years ago before it scaled up Lens creation by launching Lens Studio. So if TikTok is able to make a similar platform play, it could really be, formidable in AR. So if we go to the next slide, this is the third prediction. This stems from the mobile AR opportunity that we just went over, but where some revenue is being created. And the largest revenue category today is AR advertising. And that's really grown as a function of the high engagement being established by Snap and others to enhance social sharing. So advertisers have naturally followed those eyeballs and are seeing big results. And AR not only speaks to their creative sensibilities in terms of more dimension to show off products, but they're also seeing real results and a business case for campaign performance. And that includes the KPIs that they often look for, such as engagement depth, dwell time, and even direct conversion boosts in e-commerce context, excuse me. And we have several case studies that flesh these results out, a lot of these campaign results on AR Insider. Now, to quantify all that, if we go to the next slide, we project mobile AR advertising to grow from 1.4 billion last year to more than 8 billion by 2024. But to address the elephant in the room here, economic downturns tend to hit advertising budgets hardest, but the exception is with emerging ad mediums, which tend to actually benefit from downturns. And that's simply because those economic shifts cause advertisers to re-examine their ad mix and shift ad budgets to more performant media. So it essentially accelerates that digital transformation that's already underway. And that's exactly what we saw in the last two big downturns, which accelerated the shift to search in the early 2000s and social in the kind of early 2010s. And we believe AR will really continue to grow and get discovered for these sort of cyclical reasons, in addition to a broader secular shift. So if we go to the next slide, please. And moving on to the fourth prediction, everything I've mentioned so far is really in sort of a consumer context, but what about enterprise? So it's actually been one of AR's bright spots along with advertising. And that boils down to the lack of stylistic requirements that we see in consumer markets and the tangible business case and ROI gains from productivity boosts with line of sight AR guidance in industrial settings. But it's not all good news. One realization of the past few years is that though these factors make adoption a sort of no-brainer at the C-suite level, actual successful implementation and buy-in throughout large organizations is a fully different story. So there continue to be challenges and also sort of best practices developing for things like internal communications and change management, which is really where the battle for enterprise AR will be fought, not necessarily with the technology itself. So if we go to the next slide, due to those challenges, we think enterprise AR's tipping point will be delayed. It sort of keeps pushing back, and it won't happen in 2021, but we're confident that it will come eventually as the momentum for enterprise AR and some of those, clear-cut ROI business cases sort of overpower all that inertia, but it will be a gradual climb. So speaking of gradual climb, if we go to the next slide with the kind of fifth and final prediction, what about VR? So it's certainly gotten a lot of flack for being a disappointment over the past few years in kind of broader tech markets. But the thing is, I keep reminding people, VR is doing just fine, and it's growing as an industry at healthy levels. It's just sort of unfortunate that it was so hyped as a world-changing technology, which hasn't happened to the kind of levels that it was hyped up to do or to be. So if we go to the next slide to kind of quantify where we are with VR, 2020 certainly saw some challenges, and unit shipments declined about 10% year over year, and that's due mostly to both COVID-infected supply chain impediments, but also a decline in consumer spending. But the key point is it could have been worse if not for a few factors. So most notably, Oculus Quest 2's October launch created a strong Q4 surge for VR, and Facebook really beefed up its supply chain after learning from Quest 1 that it underestimated demand in Q4 2019 and didn't want to make that mistake again. So over the past few months, it's actually done a pretty good job keeping pace with demand. And we think that'll continue into 2021, especially given Quest 2's quality to price ratio, which is very strong. And it also helps that Facebook is making long-term investments in building a network effect rather than prioritizing near-term hardware margins. So I like to say it's trading margins for market share. But the practical result of all of that for consumers is that they're getting hardware that's much cheaper than it should be. And that's going to continue to drive sales. So the bottom line is that we see aggregate sales of console, PC, and standalone VR hardware growing to just over 6 million units this year by the end of 2021 and 14 million by 2024. And during that time, Quest and all its future variants, 3, 4, however many kind of Quest variants we see in this kind of 5-year period, will certainly take over as the market share leader for all the reasons I just mentioned. So that's it for me. I hope this has been helpful in sort of setting the stage and providing some framework for all the stuff happening across the spatial spectrum. And there's a lot more where that came from. And you can contact me using the info on this slide when you can go to the contact slide there to kind of transition out. And hopefully this set the stage well for Tom and Amy to go over Tom's much longer and more insightful list of AR projections. So at this point, I'll kind of get out of the way and welcome Tom and Amy to the stage.